Good afternoon, everybody. I can see the waiting room filling up. Just going to start in a couple of moments. Brilliant. I think we're good to go. So welcome to you all and good afternoon. And welcome to the Peter Jones Foundation's Igniting Enterprise webinar series. It's actually the first of this series for this academic year. My name is Kumar Hindocha, and I work for the foundation in a role of Head of Partnerships. I will actually be your host for the next 7 of these. And let me tell you, there is some incredible business founders who are going to be tuning in at this time to share their stories with you, but crucially, together with our partner, Pearson, we have carefully selected these entrepreneurs and guided the questions, topics we're going to be speaking about to help you, which are the teachers, across business, enterprise, and entrepreneurship, so that it really matches with your curriculums and is completely, obviously, relatable to your students as well. So, really quick introduction to the Peter Jones Foundation. If you haven't heard of us before, we're a registered charity with a quite well-known founder and president, Peter Jones from Dragon's Den. And we're at the forefront of encouraging, empowering, and educating young people around the world, not just in the UK, really in enterprise and entrepreneurship. So nearer to the end of today's kind of discussion, about 50 minutes or so, I will share a little bit more about our core programs, if that's all right with you. That really, you're as in your role as teachers and your schools can really take advantage of some of our resources at the foundation. And our whole kind of mission really is to give every young person the best opportunity to further their, whether it's in employment, self-employment, and even in entering higher education. So a really quick bit of housekeeping as just before we introduce our speaker today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Livestorm, this is the platform we'll be using for the series. Can I please encourage all of you to use the questions tab? So the questions tab is, I think it should be on the bottom right of your screens. It should work on mobile as well. And just start off, I guess, in the chat, if you could just say a little hello and maybe where you're tuning in from today, that would be amazing. And the emojis are quite a popular tool as well. If you want to give a little thumbs up or a smiley face, that's more than encouraged. So we'd like this very much to be a two-way conversation when I introduce the speaker in just a moment. So please do get those questions in when you have. And just so you know, all the recordings will be shared with you. Snippets will be given for you to take into the classrooms. And they will also be shared on the Peter Jones Foundation's social channels as well. And the full recording of today's conversation will be uploaded to the Foundation's YouTube channel. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Paul Gilligan, who is from the Magical Mushroom Company, which will be abbreviated today, I'm sure, a few times for MMC. So that is the Magical Mushroom Company. I'm just going to invite him now. Please give me a moment. Should be making his way. Cool. I see that everyone's getting involved in the chat. Hello, everyone. Hi, Addy. Hi, Rapinda. Hi, Victoria. I feel like a social media influencer reading this out. Hi, Michelle from Luz. Oh, we're covering good parts of the country. Hello, Anonymous. And Paul has actually just messaged that he's here. Paul, I've added you to participate. Is there anything you can click to join? There should be a join button for you. Shouldn't take a moment. Paul, is there any button on your side for you to join as a participant? Might be a green button. It's been a day, just for all of you to know, it's been a day of technical difficulties for me personally. So this is no change whatsoever. Okay, I can't see if he's actually. Okay. Yeah, Paul said no, he's going to leave and come back. So, hi, Celeste. We just did a quick intro, and we're just waiting for
in around 45 days. It works like the old stuff, but when you break it up, it breaks down with food waste, garden waste, or just in nature. It's cruelty-free, biodegradable, and naturally water-resistant. In fact, it's so natural, we actually grow it. From mycelium, the root structure of mushrooms, combined with agricultural waste, helping businesses of all kinds, from FMCGs to electronics, and kitchen and bedroom manufacturers like BA. And when our packaging is done protecting your products, it can go back to the earth, ready to grow again. When you work with nature, you can make a thing without having to break a thing. We've now made over 1 million things. That's 200 metric tons of polystyrene replaced.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me, everyone. I think we got the gist of that. I think we got the
just so everyone knows, it wasn't loading very well, that animation, but it is that the music syncs perfectly, but we can share it out afterwards anyway, so it might be a bit too much bandwidth for this.
We'll definitely circulate it, yeah, definitely. So in your own words then, Paul, what is so bad about polystyrene? What made you go down this route?
Yeah, well, first thing, if we start about, polystyrene. I mean, polystyrene in itself is a very successful product and has served as well. But really, it's now clogging up the seas. It's clogging up the land. It's going to landfill. There's no place for it to be to recycle in the UK, and the foam can leach chemicals into the environment, causing harm in water sources. And just the production of polystyrene has enormous creative hazardous waste. So, I could talk for a long time about polystyrene, but we all know the ills of it. So we need to replace it. And certainly when it's single use, polystyrene has its use when it's there for a long time, such as insulation in buildings. But when it's used for 72 hours to package a television or something, it seems insane to have something that's going to be around for 500 years. Yeah. So when I found out, myself and the two co-founders asked me to get involved, and I couldn't believe someone hadn't done this in the UK. So it shows you a bit about being an entrepreneur. So that week I got on a plane to New York. They're based in Albany in upstate New York. So I got a train to Albany and then hired a car and doorstepped them. Now, I had been speaking to them before, actually, by someone's alter ego. So the person I was emailing didn't actually exist. So they get quite a lot of this. And I actually turned up. But to cut a long story short, they realised I was serious. We had the right the experience and the money behind us and the legal expertise. So we opened the first site. We signed the exclusive contract for the UK to use their technology, and now we've got the exclusive license to use that technology around the whole of the European Union. So amazing. I just wanted to ask you, how did you, when it comes to agricultural waste, what was that kind of light bulb moment when you went, mushrooms, or there's a quality in mushrooms? How did that come about? Well, we're using the word mushrooms, but that's really a play on words, because we don't use mushrooms in itself. We use mycelium, which is the root structure of mushrooms, and it's about a low percentage of the recipe. Okay. So we use, for a mushroom or fruiting body to form, it needs to be a male and a female, but the mycelium we use is asexual, so it will never grow a mushroom. But it could create a primordial growth if you don't stop the growth in time. So just to go back, we licensed this technology from Ecovative in the US. So they've had this for around 10 years. They've got 30 approved patents around it. But the good thing about starting this in the UK and the European Union is that we can innovate, and we can also use abundant indigenous local agricultural waste. Such as rapeseed in the UK, and many others we're starting to test, and I'll come to that in more detail as we go through. So we use mushrooms because it's accessible. A lot of people don't know what mycelium is. Yeah. But certainly, mycelium is what grows mushrooms.
Okay, brilliant. Understood. Thanks for clarifying that. The next question I have for you is around market research. So before you jumped on that flight to Albany, as you said, how did you go about your market research?
Yeah, and again, we'll come to more details as we go through the webinar about building a business plan and the detail that's required around it. But for anything that you want to start a business with, any idea, any product, of course, the first thing you've got to look at is what's the market. Is there a gap in that market? How big is the market? How large are our sales if we penetrate that market? To what percentage? So. Right. It's quite clear for me when we did the research. We bought this research from a reputable, what they're called Market Research Futures. Also, we got some research from Ernst & Young, so we know the credibility of this data. So we built our business plan around it, really. Mm-hmm. In that we know how big the market size is, and if we think we can penetrate 1%, 2%, 5%, this is how much sales we'll get. So that was part of the negotiations to get the contract, to get the sales target that we agreed would be reasonable to have exclusivity. This is how much we need to penetrate. So it's quite a simple calculation, but it's quite startling in the EU. To get some enormous sales targets, because the market is so big of polystyrene, then you don't need to penetrate much to make a big difference. But, it's not just the revenue, of course. It's about making a difference and seriously disrupting polystyrene as a packaging solution. So for me, we like to do the glamorous parts, and you'll see some of the case studies, but it's really the more boring, more conventional, and the more of a commodity as it gets used regularly, such as kitchen doors that you saw on the animation there. So BA components are getting close to the 7 figures, the million units a year of our solution. So it does work, and it's good enough to replace polystyrene. But of course, you just take it back to your garden or put it in the waste bin. It's gone back in 45 days.
Yeah, very true, very true. I'm going to talk about brand awareness. So how did you go about developing your brand for Magical Mushroom?
Yeah, and it's a very important part of the message, and none more important than the branding. Now you'll see those two images there. I've just given that to highlight some of the decision making. So, I mean, I'm lucky. I've got a very good friend called Greg Nugent. I've known since I was 18. Now he's gone on to do some amazing things, including marketing director of the London Olympics and Paralympics. He was also the marketing director of the Eurostar when it moved to St Pancras. He did a film called Rising Phoenix, which won an Emmy. He's chair of the Nottingham Project. He helped form the Earthshot Prize. So an enormous amount of things. But anyway, we were having fish and chips one night in Beeston, a local fish and chip shop, and we were called Symbiotech then. I won't say the exact words he used about the name Symbiotech, but he obviously didn't like it. So he said, why don't you call yourself the Magic Mushroom Company? And this is quite early on. So, you think that's quite controversial. So we diffused it slightly by making it a plural, as in the Magical Mushroom Company. And then we went to a branding agency, a very, very impressive agency called North, which Greg introduced us to. And they did us a very good deal on how identity should look like. So the first iteration of that was a presentation that was 270 slides, so quite a lot to take in. So if you look at some of those, so you'll notice that the Symbiotech was using that old logo, and the Magical Mushroom, which they wanted to push me towards, is a bit too much fun. Because when you've got a fun name, having a fun logo probably isn't a great match. So then we went for the more conventional, safe. It reminds me a bit of an old, Western, Central American bank, that's been around for years, So it also looks a bit like a mushroom, and it indicates protection. So you just see these logos, but a lot of thought and discussions goes into that final decision. But that was a big part of it, and we've recently updated the website. So it's very important, and I could talk for a long time about how that came about. But that's where it started. That's the direction we took, and when we updated the website recently, then we went into more of a challenger brand type. And a challenger brand that people don't know is where you're trying to disrupt a market, but in quite a big way, which is obviously what we set out to do. And I always like to say that we're a big company that are currently small.
Right. Okay. And the website looks great, by the way. Encourage everyone listening to get over there. And now that you mentioned the element of the logo, I actually see that now. But obviously, as you said, a lot of thought goes into that side of things. Paul, I wanted to ask. It
does. And the other thing I should say, actually, just quickly, I forgot to cover off, is that quite amusingly, we weren't allowed to register the Magical Mushroom name with HMRC Companies House for obvious reasons. So we were allowed to trademark it. So the name I decided was MMC Holding International, which isn't as controversial as Magical Mushroom. So we trade as Magical Mushroom Company.
Okay. Brilliant. Good to know. I'm going to move on to a really key question, I guess, for our audience today as well, is in what ways have both innovation and enterprise contributed to the success of the business?
Yeah, I mean, the real innovation is the material properties and the way mycelium binds with agricultural waste and most parts. So the innovation is almost there. So for me, and us as a team, me leading it, is about the innovation, about how we scale this, how we attract the best people, how we use those local agricultural waste. So you'll see an image there of real innovation. So just very briefly, we imagine a bakery. So when you're filling these trays up, so if you want to make 20 French sticks, you need to have, and you've got 5 cavities in a mold, you need 5 to make the 20 French sticks. It's similar to that to us. So we buy in that pre-made substrate, which is hemp shiv, which is normally used for stable floors in winter. So we bind that with the mycelium and some flour. That's just those 3 ingredients plus water. So the problem with that is we get that from the Netherlands. We're bringing it across the continent. It's expensive. It hits our carbon footprint. It's expensive to bring along. And of course, we don't make it. So the biggest innovation we've got, which is currently underway, is to bring that inoculation or the raw materials in-house. So that factory opens it will be fitted out at the end of this year and be functional and operational by early next year. So that's our raw materials plant. And what you see there is an automated hub where the 4 days it takes to incubate when the agricultural waste and the mushroom are bound together, then that superstructure will be how we grow that in very large scale, and then that brings our raw materials down hugely, so we can get either price parity with polystyrene and have a more profitable business. And employ more people and attract more investors. But most importantly on that innovation, the UK government are great at Innovate grants. They're long, arduous and very detailed, but we've won a couple of Innovate grants and Innovate loans to be able to do this and help taxpayers buy our exports.
And just out of interest, on the application process for those innovation grants, did you handle that yourself or did you go to an expert?
Well, like everything, when these things come along, you've never done them before, so you have to go to an expert. So once you pay for that first one, there's your template then for the future. And you might need the odd bit of help, maybe get someone to proofread it. But in the most part, they're 10,000 words and very detailed. You have 5 independent assessors scrutinise them, and sometimes there's panels to follow up. So, you know, the win rate is low, but when you win, then it's very beneficial. And the good thing about winning using government money is that there's lots of scrutiny, quite rightly, because it's taxpayers' money. So, you know, there's a real emphasis on project planning, delivery, and reporting.
Okay, brilliant. And as we look at this image of your factory to be in not so distant future, I just wanted to obviously make the audience aware that you are running a very successful international business. Throughout the webinar series, guys, we're talking to all kind of sectors. We're talking to local, national businesses, but Paul runs an international business. In fact, you've got a factory in Bulgaria. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I mean, I'd just like to stress that the factory hasn't opened yet. I mean, we will be very successful. We know that, but the factory is. It's our biggest one. It's 20,000 square foot compared to the 7,500 square foot that's out here. So, you know, we plan for the future of where we're going to go. So if you see those first 3 there, Mushroom 1, so very simple to be able to get the name. Mushroom 1 was Esher, which is the first factory. Mushroom 2, where I'm sat now, is Atimer in the Nottingham, the UK. Mushroom 3 is Sophia. So Mushroom 4 is our new factory. I alluded to it earlier, the raw materials plant. So that'll be in Beeston, in Nottingham, about a mile from where I'm sat now. The next plan is for France, where that's another hot spot. So there's no point in driving things. So a lot of people ask the question, if you've got an international company, why don't you have a mega factory in the Czech Republic, for example? Well, that doesn't really fit our model because people are trying to improve their environmental credentials and their sustainability credentials. So driving it from 5,000 kilometres from the Czech Republic doesn't work. And plus, we want to use local agricultural waste, employ local people, and have a local provenance. So they're the plans for the next ones, and all these are starting to be in advanced negotiations. Certainly 4 and 5. 4 is imminent, and 5 will be the next. So we plan ahead. So it has its challenges, and unfortunate that I've worked internationally a fair bit. So there are nuances to every country. It's about respecting not just the customs and the business laws, and you know, like everything in life, you make mistakes that you pay for at the time, and then never do it again because every country is different. I mean, one terrible example of that I've got is we did some business. I've done some business in the Middle East, one particular country, and they're quite strict on their custom documents. So very briefly, you have to have a stamped commercial invoice from the Chamber of Commerce in the UK and all matching up, where in the European Union you don't, in Japan you don't, in the UK you don't. So if it arrives there and it hasn't got it, you need to get it. And that particular one was a very large consignment. I think the value was £250,000. So you paid demurrage charges. And the problem was it landed on a Friday, which was the last day in the UK, and then they go into the weekend. So that was a Thursday, actually, Friday, Saturday. So I think that cost, it was £30,000 in demurrage charges. So you don't do it again. So you learn from all these and you talk to people, and a lot of things go well, but it's complex to open these. So it's not cutting corners on quality accountants in that country, really studying the law, getting the best people, getting the recruitment right. And as you saw in that market research, make sure you open it in the right place.
Well, you mentioned recruitment there, and that's obviously a key investment for any business, big or small, trying to scale up. Another, the more kind of literal kind of investment term, and something that you've done fairly recently and quite successfully, is your last investment raise. I hope you don't mind me sharing this with the guys on the call. Was 3.4 million euros.
Yeah.
So, if you can describe for our audience, how did that investment process work?
Yeah, like any investment process, and I can't stress enough the importance of that original business plan. Now, so to raise money, in very simple terms, for anyone that doesn't know, who hasn't done it, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that haven't. So, first thing, you have your idea, but that's really 1% of the deal. Really, that's the idea, but it's really the other 99%. How do you deliver it? So, you have to write a very detailed business plan. There's lots of templates out there that can help, and which is where I got it from. I've written some before, but the world changes. So, and then you get experts to review it for you. People you know, friends, people you've worked with, people that you trust, people that have run businesses. Sometimes quite painful. It comes back with some things you may not have seen, but it's all worthwhile. And then you finish it off, and just give you some idea. My business plan before any of this has started, before we'd even recruited anyone, before we'd even raised any money, was 96 pages. So I think it was about 15,000 words. And once you've done that, you check it, and then you break it down into a pitch deck, which is much more accessible, and you can present it, not too dissimilar to what we're doing now, but with more detail, of course. And then sometimes people use a teaser, like a 2-pager, to entice people in. And then it's really selling your story to the people who may invest. Now, fortunately, the UK government's got a couple of good schemes. One of them's, they're both related to each other. It's SEIS, which is the Seed Enterprise Scheme. So the first 150,000, which has been raised actually to 250 on the latest controversial budget. But anyway, that's gone to 250. So what happens then? Say someone invests £50,000 into the business, they will get £25,000 off their next tax bill. Right. Not only that, if the ship does sink, then they get almost all that money that they paid in cash back. And then once you go past 150 or 250, then it goes to EIS, which is then up to 5 million, and then the tax back is 30%. So this is really important for any business that wants to start, because without that, your money, unless it's through a convertible loan note, which will get too difficult to explain. But essentially, people are buying the story because you haven't got any figures to prove. You haven't got any sales, you haven't got any profits, they're all forecasts. So it's more of an art than a science at this point. So it has been underpinned and supported by the government in that tax break, and if something goes wrong. But nonetheless, people, that's not a reason for people to lose their money. So they have to believe your story, and particularly the leader. In my case, it's always me. I get the team around with me, of course, and we've got a very skilled team, but I didn't have at the start. So that grows. The more money you get, the more the team gets, and then the more the integrity of the business grows. So it's about selling the story, but you can't sell the story unless you believe it yourself, and unless you've written a very detailed plan. And any business that hasn't written a business plan will fail.
Very true, and very good.
It's certainly manufacturing. Yeah.
Okay. And your SEIS investor at the 150k level, how did you find that particular investor? Did you pitch around town? Was it network?
Well, I mean, this one's quite an attract because it is so different. Then it does excite people, but with everything, it's about a network, getting the right people in, and I would never employ someone. So at the beginning of a business, or anyone that comes in that hasn't got more expertise than me. Otherwise, there's no point. So, and you use your network. I worked for Sainsbury's for 14 years, so. When John Hartland, who was a retail board director of Sainsbury's, retired, the first thing I did was met him almost. He was leaving the building. I was there at the door asking him to come and help. So he was the first person, and he's still involved now as our chair. And he's, incredible advice, and charged me nothing like you'd expect for someone of that experience. So it's about building a network. But then the non-exec directors I bring in, they have a network and they have people who want to invest. Because don't forget, it's a benefit to other people to invest as well, particularly when, we've gone up 13 times evaluation in 3 years, so we hope that'll continue more. So the earlier you get in, the better it is for the investor. And also, most importantly about the SEI scheme, after 3 years, which keeps the investors patient, that after 3 years on an exit, and for everyone who doesn't want an exit, when the company is sold or changes its hand considerably, then there's no capital gains tax for the people that came in,
Right.
and they hold their shares for 3 years.
Right.
You hear me?
Amazing. Can you still hear me, Paul?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Just you went off for a minute, but you're back. Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Paul? Hello.
I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
Perfect.
you.
While we're on this slide, actually, sorry, I think my internet just dipped out. Sorry about that, everyone. But we're back. On this slide, actually, numbers 6, 7, and 8. So your future plans, and Romania, Germany, and Italy. How firm is that in your mind, and how kind of adaptable do you have to be in terms of those destinations not coming off in the future?
Yeah, and we've had that in the past, but they're pretty fixed now, because we've got people, partners who want to, for different reasons. I mean, if you look, Italy is fairly urgent because there's so much business there that's coming our way, so it makes sense to open there. The industrial heartland of Italy, Germany the same, and that particular region is close to Poland, so it has challenges with cheaper labour across the border, so there's good incentives to come there. As everyone knows on this call, Germany is very open to sustainability and green credentials and replacing plastic, so it's an obvious place. And Romania, there's a lot of hemp shifts in Romania. It's also growing very fast, and a lot of the manufacturing base is moving from Germany into Romania, so highly skilled workforce and good location, but not least the raw materials plant will be there, and there's the second amount of hemp in Romania than there is in France, which is the largest in Europe. But I had someone do an MBA on these micro plants, so I know pretty well where the best places are to open. And his professor was the supply chain director for Hewlett Packard. So we got to close detail on why we've chosen these.
Okay, makes sense. And you mentioned you used to work in your early career at a few big retailers. I know you used to work at Co-op, and you mentioned Sainsbury's. I do want to come back to that. But the next question I want to ask you, and I guess the next section of this webinar today, is to really delve into you as an entrepreneur, your mindset as an individual that helped you succeed. So the next question I have is, what skills and characteristics do you think have helped you succeed?
Yeah, and we'll come to it when we talk about working for another company. But I mean, it's no surprise really that the average age of a successful CEO of a startup is probably 45. I think around that number. So people think that's quite high. And it's not to say you couldn't work at a startup or be part of it, but experience does count for a lot. You have to have fallen down many times and pick yourself up. So I'll just put that side on there, because nothing I've done for this particular webinar. It's something that I use anyway, and I call that the big 6 for this year. So on the board meetings, there's so many things to do. So what do you prioritise? And that, I suppose, that gives you a good idea of how my mind works, really. I mean, so the big 6. It was during our successful cricket season, wasn't it? So I went to a lot of cricket, so it seemed to work. And you can't have too many. So the raw materials plant's very important. Having the experience I've got and the team we've got, that we have to bring those raw material costs down. So you think about the ultimate mitigation of any risk of that is owning it ourselves. So that's right up there as a priority. And sales are everything in any business, So if you can get that top line sales going, then everything else is so much easier. You can have as many targets as you like, but if you haven't got the top line going, then it's very difficult to achieve your target. So, getting sales is one thing, but also getting pre-booked repeat sales is the most important thing. So that's a real focus for us, and we're doing quite well on that this year as people buy the capacity. Because the challenge we've got a perishable product which becomes non-perishable. So it's challenging in that respect that it isn't like polystyrene just gets blown off a machine. The labour cost reduction, as I said, I've worked for Sainsbury's many times, so we're bringing that that process-driven experience of a long time, 14 years. To labour cost reduction, which is new to lots of startups. The efficiency is important, and getting things right first time, because everything's about prototyping. And whilst you're an entrepreneur, it's still, you have to get the processes right. So an inquiry that comes in all the way through to its first order is 46 steps. We have that on a Monday.com project management. All have gates and people responsible, but these things, they take time. And the marketing and brand awareness we've spoken about, and essential to everything we do is being a great place to work. So, I pride myself on how many people that we've lost. We put E&D. I mean, equality and diversity is the only target left for me as a CEO on the scorecard. The rest is all that ball's been passed around. So we're doing something. So we're accredited living wage employer. So there's a rise come through now. So we're following that. So people, everything. We don't want to lose people. Have to be trained. So I'll talk through the scorecard in a minute. But being entrepreneurs, one having the ideas, but the hard graft of making it happen and being prepared to work till 2 a.m. for 18 months is really not unexpected for a startup.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to hear you say that this graph, this image that we're seeing is kind of a reflection of your mind. And have you always been quite a logical, process-driven person, or you have to develop?
Well, you have to be when you work for a company, which I advocate people should always do that to start with, because you learn, because the systems are embedded and versionized, and it's very difficult to change them unless. So, I want to empower people, which we do. We've got a great team. In my number 2 has come from McLaren F1 as a engineering or CRO, so looks after engineering. But John Hartland, who I spoke about earlier, has this mantra all the time, and I agree with him, and I follow it, and I'd be stupid not to listen to him, having worked with him at Sainsbury's as well. Now, the first thing I did for the start anyway was have a board of directors before I employed him, before I even got a key into a rental. So I think I've got 17 board meetings minuted. So it might seem a bit ridiculous to people to have board meetings before you've even started anything, but if you are going to start something big, you've got big ambitions, you have to put that governance early, otherwise you won't be able to do it. And then you get the executives. The executives came 18 months after we started because I couldn't afford them, and then you get senior management. But if you take away sales on those 5 segments, there's only 4 things in a business that you need to manage to get right, and you need to have the best players on it. So the people that I spoke about, I don't use HR, as you see, it's people and culture. So finance, you've got to look at the money. So I've got a great CFO. She fixed, one of the first things she did was fix the utility costs way before Ukraine. So we've got our utility costs fixed for 4 years. Now, kind of as many ideas as you like, but if you haven't got the fundamental, pragmatic business acumen that someone like RFD's got, then it's difficult. You have to have someone great to run the operations. If that falls down, no matter how many sales, you can't get out the door, and systems, of course.
On the utility costs, have you quantified how much that has saved you, that decision?
Well, we wouldn't be talking now, I don't think. So it would be going from a bill. So one factor could be 130,000 going up to, at the spot price, and have been supported now. So at the spot price of 120, you'd be talking at 600,000. So again, anyone that runs a business on variable cost in manufacturing, you've got to ask for it, but it's still someone else has to deliver it. So those 4 things are important: the systems, the technology, and the sales are given. Yeah. But always bear in those bedrocks of business don't really change.
Okay, and we touched briefly on your role at Sainsbury's. If I can transport you back to your younger self, there's obviously a lot of similarities between and transferable skills you gain in an employment setting like that. What is the key differences, you'd say, working in a startup, your own startup, coming from that? What should you be prepared for? What experience?
Well, I think if you think about someone that does very well in their job in the corporate world, so think about a running track. You're running around that running track, you're always first, you're looking behind you, the space behind you, but you know what the running track looks like, you know what's coming around the corner, you've got another bend, you're following the line. But a new startup, as you going cross country, you're falling over branches, suddenly a stream arrives, you didn't see it coming, you got to go navigate it, someone's falling in, how to get them out, then you stop them falling in the next time, it's a different world, and things fly at your windscreen that you've never seen before, so nothing prepares you for it. And I left Sainsbury's 10 years ago, so I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, and I've made lots of mistakes and learned lots of things. So that experience of working for corporate, or a business that's got process, it doesn't have to be a big one, but a business where it's a safe environment, where it's embedded and you follow that, is something that, if I had my time again, I would do. Maybe I would have left a bit sooner, But I'll come to the scorecard in a minute. I learned all that, how to measure results, processes, but it is very, very different, and it's not for everyone because it's much, much tougher, but more exciting.
Okay. Okay, we covered this, didn't we?
Well, no, I didn't. Just briefly, yeah. So we can go to the next slide, to be honest with you, really. And that is, and that's taken me a year to do. So just very briefly, again, for anyone that starts a business or understands how business works. So the two co-founders stepped back. So then I had to recruit a team to come on board. So the first thing to do with anything is to obviously write a job description. So John Hartland, I was fortunate to get him, and I got people and culture consultants. So the three of us sat down. So we start working. We follow the ACAS rules to make sure that we're legal. So you start at the bottom, what's their role, all the way up. Then I start thinking, well, we've got the job description. What are they working towards? What are their values? So then before you know it, we've got a huge job on our hands for. Which was great. We had 8 workshops, the three of us. Then Natalia, who joined me, my chief of staff, my right arm, if you like, who joined later. So the 4 of us worked through them, and then it's come to fruition now. So we've got a scorecard. It's growing profitable sales, growing customer numbers, growing our capacity, growing our people, and growing our innovation. So they're the 5 headings that I chose, and then we have sub headings underneath. And those metrics are the same for everyone, whether you work as a technician on the shop floor or you're the COO or the CFO. But what's different is the personal objective that you've got to help us achieve that metric. So everyone's got that now. It's cascaded out. So at the end, we're not doing it this year because it's too early, but next year there's a bonus scheme. So the reward strategy has been presented to the board next week. So everyone better put into a box. So I've given you an idea, just a random name, Mikey Fungi there. Look, so he's in B2, so he's quite a steady player. But so C1 is the C is, they're not doing very well on the PMRs. They get A to C and 1 to 3, of course, 3 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So I don't envisage anyone being in C1 for long. You go one way or the other, but we haven't got in that position anyway. But the good thing about doing this, as you start growing, you've got a plant in Bulgaria, you've got a plant somewhere else. In any business you've got where you're suddenly going to get multi-units, if you don't measure these key metrics, especially about the people, paid absence, unpaid absence, then you can have some horror running a factory that has got no people skills. People are going sick. So with these metrics, you can pick it up quickly. But again, it's a huge piece of work. It's a big undertaking, but it would be impossible to do it once you've got 3 factories running at full slog. So it's just a little idea, just for you then, of that corporate experience combined with entrepreneurship.
It combines exactly. I've just got actually 2 more questions from you, and then I guess we'll open it up to the questions that have been coming in from our audience. I'll let you give the introduction to this one, but basically, as you shared with me on our brief call yesterday, you are in the unenviable position of running 2 businesses side by side. I don't understand how you do that. The other one's called ASM. Would you mind just telling us about how your day is split between so many different priorities and juggling 2 businesses?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it was lots of hours, the first year or so, but that's what we do. The benefit is you grow a successful business. But I had a business anyway, which is still going, which fabricates products. But with everything, when you're running a business, these opportunities come along that you would never dream you would ever do yourself. And then you think, well, it can't be that hard if they do it. That's how they go. So particularly with manufacturing, you have bottlenecks in production, which are mostly as a result of third parties, so subcontracting out. So in our example, it's making growing racks with trolleys, making 3D prints, and then the trays. We grow a tray, so we have to form these trays. So they're expensive to take time, and we can't do it for a few weeks, mate. All that business is going on. So it got quite critical and expensive. So we decided as a board, rather than take it in-house, I'd use my other business, recruit an operations director, and just diversify a little bit. So before we knew it, we'd learned how to buy CNC machines, get an expert, to go out and find an expert who can CNC who's done CNC and the tooling, so they cover the ops director. We've now won a grant on that business now, which now means we can granulate the MMC trays in. So with plastic, just moving carbon from one waste to direct. If you had all the carbon that's ever been produced, it'd probably be surprisingly small. But it's always moving and changing what it is and its characteristics. But with us, so if a tray becomes redundant for MMC, then it comes back to ASM. It's granulated down through the extrusion system, it's called. So it's in fine powder. Then it's repurposed as a tray. So you got full circularity. But not only that, it's cheaper and it's quicker. And I haven't got to chase someone to do it and then pay the invoice. So there's a number of things that a service, which will then probably get bought by MMC, but also that business will diversify. It will now make trays for other people and take their trays back, and many other things. We make the growing racks, and the growing racks that we make for MMC are now going to be used in the bakery market, even cheaper. So it's also
Oh, I think we might have just lost him. The question I was going to ask him. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Oh, I think there he comes. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. You're back. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to jump in there. Actually, it's perfect time. As an entrepreneur, I guess the question and a lot of the perception of an entrepreneur is that you can never really switch your brain off. As you just described there, you've got two businesses that do lean on each other. Now, would you, if you spotted an opportunity in a completely unrelated sector, theoretically, would that be something that you couldn't stop yourself from pursuing?
No, I definitely wouldn't. No. It's really to service MMC at cheap, because we're buying it at half the price. Right. That's still possible. That we reduce the price, reduce the lead time. So it has to be connected. I wouldn't know scattergun approach. I've only got so much time. I've got a family as well.
Yeah.
13-year-old son who plays sport all over. So I'm constantly taxiing around. In fact, so much I manage his hockey team. But no, it has to be related. It has to be feasible, and it has to be.
Okay.
I can do this in the same place.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, I'm gonna jump into the questions tab. So anyone listening, if you still got time to get your questions in, so please do send them across. So starting with the top one then, how important are environmental factors when deciding business aims?
Well, for us, it's a very fulcrum, because that's what we do. So it's a great question. So to give you some idea, we're now measuring our carbon. So that work is almost finished, I think, by next week. So it's been going for 3 months. So once we've got that measurement, it shows us our carbon footprint. So even to as much as I went to Milan recently, and I went on the train all the way there, because it's much lower carbon footprint, but I can still work on the train as well. So we think about everything. So everything's measured. Now, once we've got that measurement, rather than offsetting it, we're going to balance it. Now, balancing is planting trees. So the planting season in February. So Sherwood Forest not far from here. So there's a company called Balance. So whatever that measurement is, we then balance it. So we're putting the carbon back out. We also, once we start the inoculation plant, hemp is a great sequester of CO2 anyway, so that's going to help, but not measured that far yet. And then once we've got the report, we then put the corrective action in to make us carbon neutral naturally, rather than this. So it's everything we do. We almost lock in the bins now, so I can expect exactly what goes in. So we question everything. We've got a dashboard on that now. So yes, it has to be for us. But we particularly don't want a Guardian reporter, someone quite rightly coming in and saying, you on one hand you're selling a green product, but you're not being green yourself. So we measure that.
Okay. Next question in the chat is, what keeps you awake at night?
Well, I'm fortunate. I can turn
apart
off
from the hockey fixtures.
Yeah, no, exactly. Sort those out, and that is a bit that is quite burdensome. But I'm fortunate I can turn off. I will think about things, and I think often if you can't find a solution to something, you're concerned about it. I mean, it has to be. I don't have goals, so I think goals, is an anticlimax. Have targets and a strategy, that's fine. But goals, once you've reached that goal, what do you do next? So that doesn't concern me too much. But then often I wake up in the morning, that answer is already there. So I think less about it really, and just spend time with family. Try and keep work at home. I will work late, but I'm fortunate I can go out like that.
That's amazing. That's an amazing quality. And do you have any practical tips? I mean, do you go for a jog, or is anything that you do to that just completely divides your day between work and personal and home life?
I think what's the worst that can happen? What can't be resolved really. There's certain crisis points that come, of course, and then you have to deal with them, and that's quite stressful. Even they don't come around very often. But if you go back to the original point, if anything goes wrong, really, you can't really blame anyone. It's only yourself, and that's in any leadership role, whether you're a manager or it happens here. Really, you either recruit the wrong person, you haven't told them, or you haven't listened, and you haven't dealt with it really. So you are in control of it yourself.
So if you're on top of it, you shouldn't worry. But of course, things happen that you worry, finishing funding rounds. So, but those 6 I showed you there are the things I think about most, which are why they're there.
Okay. Yeah, that's commendable. Can you talk a bit about behavior change? And then it goes on to explain, how do you go about getting customers to rethink their approach to packaging and convert that behavior change into sales?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Something we tackle a lot. So it's hard. It's quite a multifaceted answer to that question, really. I mean, the first thing with any sales, there's many stakeholders. So it's identifying who those stakeholders are. Because the people that naturally want that change aren't necessarily the people that can make the decision. So you have to work that out early on. Prioritizing. I mean, just on that very question, we looked at that. So what we did was look at whether we're getting the most success. So where the most success was where the percentage of our packaging was less than a certain percentage as the product they're protecting. Now, when you start getting over the 10-15%, it's difficult to get that buy for them to get the decision in. But we're saying our green credentials, case studies are really important as well. So you look at our website, every time we finish it, we get a case study because it gives us more integrity, more history, and proof that we can do it. But it's tenacity, like in any sales, really. It's no different in this, really. Obviously more gentle on the most part, but we're a business, and it's really getting the right stakeholders. And with here, we get that many. We're answering the phone more than we're knocking on the doors, to be honest with you. So it's about managing that process through. But I get involved at a senior level where we think we're making a breakthrough. But we've got a good sales team, and each one's different.
Right.
But certainly, my advice to anyone that's trying to change behaviours and people adopting something that hasn't been adopted before, it's the messaging, the way you present yourself, and getting the key stakeholders.
Okay.
That's the question.
Yeah, that definitely does answer the question. I think there's one more question in the group, and then we'll just wrap up, and I'll just give a bit of information about the foundation and how we can support schools around the country and the audience here. So the last question for you, Paul, is does the Magical Mushroom Company have defined values? You talked about company culture and how proud you are of retention and things like that. Do you have a set list of values as you see gets laminated and stuck on a wall somewhere? And how do you embody that? How do you make your staff embody that?
Yeah, we do. Now, I won't go for more now, but a couple of examples: we protect, and we protect can mean very different things. We protect our workforce, safety. It's important. So I spoke about that scorecard.
Yeah.
So on the PMR, they have their personal management view. They've got their personal behaviours around the objective, and they're marked not just on their objectives, but on how they've illustrated the values at the same time. So they're front and centre of everything we do. And because we want to be a great place to work, the values are important. And going back to that conversation I had earlier on about when we first started out, then we realised we needed to have just a vision and a mission. We also need to have values that everyone understands as part of day-to-day life. So I think they're on one of those slides, but I'd need 10 minutes to talk through it. But the answer is yes, deeply embedded in the business, and so much so that they're scored, and their bonuses. One component of it is them demonstrating the values that we want to have to be a great place to work.
Right, awesome. I just heard a quick scan. I think there's any more questions. Obviously, a massive, massive thank you on behalf of the foundation for taking time out your very, very busy schedule to talk to us about your business and your story. And I think for me, the one thing that really, really hit home was that regardless of whether the audience and I guess, young people in the future who watch this video, regardless of whether they want to set up a manufacturing company, a lot of your advice really was around, it's completely transferable to anyone listening of any company type. And you talked about things like the crucial elements in a business, your own personality and how that fed into the kind of way you ended up, and also about the stepping stones you took to become an entrepreneur, of working deliberately working in large corporations to build your experience and your understanding. So thank you on behalf of everyone here. I just want to take literally 30 seconds for the audience listening. if you haven't heard about the Peter Jones Foundation, the Igniting Enterprise has been running for a number of years. I'm really proud to host it and have fantastic speakers like Paul. I think the next one is in 2 weeks at the same time, second week of October. Can't believe it's October soon. And please do check out the Peter Jones Foundation website if you don't know about us. There is definitely ways that we can take our programs into your school. So we have I'll mention two flagship programs at the foundation. The first one is called the Tycoon Enterprise Competition. So that's the national free competition available to primary and secondary school, where very quickly in a term, we try and instill some of the skills and the mindset that Paul's been sharing today in students in the classroom. And then we also fund through loans students to run their own micro businesses and have the experience of managing their own business and things like that. So that's a Tycoon Enterprise Competition. And the other one is our Peter Jones Enterprise Academies at Key Stage 5 level. Now, that's a bit of a Peter Jones rubber stamping. You get access, your students will, as in the course, of course, they will get access to our National Entrepreneur of the Year competition, which we actually last Friday held the award ceremony for and awarded the prize of £5,000 investment into an amazing business. But we are always looking to expand and reach students that we haven't reached before. So on behalf of the foundation, thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions or follow-up, please follow up. And thank you again, Paul. Thanks, and all the best with MNC.
Thanks a lot. All right.
Cheers. Take care now. Bye-bye.